You don't forget the moment your marriage dies. It's not loud. It doesn't involve shouting. It slips in like a draft through a closed window. For me, it came on a Thursday night, right after dinner. Elise poured herself a glass of red and leaned against the counter. She looked calm. Practiced. I'm going away for the weekend, she said. I paused. Alone? She shook her head. With someone. I need to feel alive again. Just like that, 15 years of marriage fractured, quiet, sharp, final. We live just outside Portland. No kids, good income, matching routines. She was a therapist. I'm in data compliance, clean work, steady hours. We weren't the type to break dishes or scream in parking lots. But over the past 6 months, I'd noticed distance. She used to reach for my hand when we passed on the stairs. That stopped. Then came late nights at her private practice and quiet Sunday mornings where she'd stare out the window like she was waiting for someone else's life to begin. When she said she was going away with someone, I didn't ask who. I just said, okay. That surprised her. But I wasn't going to beg. I was going to watch. Listen. Learn. Because when someone shows you what they are, you don't argue. You prepare. She left Friday morning in an Uber. No hug. No backward glance. I went straight to the desktop in our office. She had forgotten to log out of her email. There it was, a folder called Happy. Inside, emails from a man named Mason T. A coach, life empowerment, self-love, the usual new age fluff. Their messages were soft, indulgent, and full of poetic lies. You deserve more. You make me feel seen. I can't wait to hold you again. I copied everything to a flash drive and began a background check. Mason Thomas. Age 42. Former speaker turned retreat facilitator. And not his first scandal. One podcast interview mentioned a dark time involving a lawsuit. I dug deeper. Reddit unearthed a story, a woman whose sister gave Mason $20,000 after he helped her through a divorce. The sister tried to sue. Lost. I messaged the poster. Her name was Abby. She replied within hours. He ruined my sister. Took her money, left her with nothing. If you're looking to burn him down, I'm listening. When Elise came home Sunday night, the house smelled like cedar and roast chicken. I smiled. Poured her a glass of wine. Asked about her weekend. She smiled back. In her mind, nothing had changed. But I had already started building her reckoning. There's something freeing about making a decision in silence. No shouting. No confrontations. Just a quiet understanding that the rules have changed, and you're no longer playing defense. By Monday morning, I had Mason's full name, birthday, and the address tied to his coaching business. It wasn't much, just a glorified Airbnb cabin in Bend where he ran weekend mindfulness retreats. On Instagram, it looked serene. In real life, it was probably a tax shelter. I was looking for something more damaging. Something permanent. I called Abby that afternoon. She sounded cautious but clear. So, you're him, she said. The husband. I am. You gonna go after your wife? Not yet, I replied. Right now, I'm going after the guy who thinks he's untouchable. She was quiet for a moment, then said, good. He deserves it. We agreed to meet the next day, halfway between Portland and Bend. A neutral diner off I-5. She wore a navy sweater and no makeup, looked me straight in the eye the moment I walked in. No hesitation. I'm not doing this for you, she said. I'm doing it for Claire. My sister. I wouldn't ask you to, I replied. But we might be able to help each other. Over coffee, Abby told me how Mason operated. He plays the same game with every woman, she said. Listens like a therapist, touches like a lover, disappears like a magician. My sister gave him everything. She thought he was her soulmate. How did he find her? Same way he found yours, Abby replied. Loneliness. That's his brand. Then she pulled out a folder. Claire kept everything. Emails. Texts. Receipts. She even recorded a few of their calls toward the end. Why? Because she planned to sue him, Abby said, flat. But her lawyer said it'd turn into a circus. So she dropped it. Still, she couldn't let it go. She slid the folder across the table. Your turn, she said. I pulled out my flash drive. We traded. That night, I listened to one of Mason's voice messages to Claire. You're too beautiful for your life. You deserve to be worshipped, not managed. Same tone. Same charm. Same manipulation. I could practically hear Elise melting to the same script. He wasn't just a cheater, he was a repeat offender with a pattern and a paper trail. Which meant he was vulnerable. Legally. Financially. Publicly. And I knew exactly who to call next. I had a friend in college named Jordan. These days, she works for a boutique law firm that specializes in character investigations, the kind that quietly tears holes in someone's professional image without ever making headlines. I sent her a summary. An hour later, she replied. This guy's a walking ethics violation. I can work with this. We agreed on a plan. Clean. No tabloids. No threats. Just pressure, the legal kind. All I had to do was keep quiet. Act normal. Let Elise believe the air was still calm while the current began to pull her under. That weekend, Elise brought me coffee in bed. You've been sweet lately, she said. I was worried. I don't know. That you were upset. I smiled. No reason to be. She leaned down, kissed my forehead. Thank you for trusting me. I said nothing. Because some lies don't need to be corrected, not when they're about to correct themselves. There's an art to revenge. The mistake most people make is rushing. They want to explode the moment they're betrayed. But a smarter man lets it simmer. He lets the enemy feel safe, even victorious, just long enough to forget they ever lit the fuse. By the end of the second week, Mason still had no idea he was under a microscope. Elise, meanwhile, floated around the house lighter than she'd been in years. She thought she was free. She didn't realize I was watching everything, and tightening the noose 1 inch at a time. Jordan moved fast. She'd found that Mason's so-called coaching business wasn't properly licensed to offer mental wellness retreats. Not in Oregon. Not in Washington. His liability insurance had lapsed last year. And his website? Stock photos, fake testimonials, zero business registration with the state. Sloppy. She also found out that Mason had received a paycheck protection loan during the pandemic, based on inflated numbers. That alone could get him audited. So, Jordan said on the phone, we've got fraud, tax exposure, and operating without a license. If he keeps drawing in clients, women like Elise, we can build a pattern of manipulation for civil court. What happens if we go public? He'd be radioactive in a week. But we weren't going public. Not yet. We wanted leverage. So we decided to contact someone close to Mason, someone with something to lose. Jordan found her, Rebecca Collin, a local event coordinator who had partnered with Mason on several emotional clarity workshops. Her name was tied to contracts, promotional content, and email invites. We sent her a message, anonymous, respectful, firm. We have documentation showing Mason has a history of manipulating female clients, violating retreat compliance laws, and running operations without insurance. We'd prefer to settle this quietly. Please contact us before your name becomes part of the record. She replied in 12 minutes. I met Rebecca the next day, at a cafe in Salem. She was mid-30s, smartly dressed, sharp eyes, not surprised at all. I knew something was off, she said. But I needed the paycheck. I figured he was just another narcissist playing guru. I showed her a printout of the receipts, recordings, and legal violations. Her face paled. I have a business license to protect, she said. I'm not going down with him. Then don't, I said. Help us build the timeline. Document everything. Email chains. Contracts. Anything that shows Elisa's involvement. She blinked. Wait, your wife's involved too. She was a client, I said. Might still be. Rebecca leaned back. You really are playing the long game, aren't you? I'm not here to ruin reputations, I said. Only to return the truth to its rightful owners. She smirked. That's poetic. And kind of terrifying. That night, Elise came home late. She said she stayed after hours with a client in crisis. Normally, I would have believed her. But I'd placed a tracking tile in her purse. She hadn't gone to her office. She'd gone to Bend. Same Airbnb cabin. Same man. I didn't confront her. Instead, I called Jordan. Send the packet. She knew what I meant. She sent Mason a package via certified mail, enough evidence to let him know someone was watching. No threats. Just facts. Inside was a single note. We know who you are. Sooner or later, she will too. The following Monday, Elise was unusually quiet. She stared at her phone most of the day. No humming while making coffee. No idle conversation. Something had shifted. And I knew why. Mason had pulled back. Abby confirmed it. Her sister's name came up again. Claire had received a message from an old mutual friend. Mason was going dark for a while, citing personal attacks from jealous people. What a joke. He wasn't disappearing for protection. He was running. Later that night, Elise looked up from her wine glass. Have you ever kept something from me? She asked softly. Sure, I said, not even flinching. Plenty. She nodded like she expected that. Do you think people always get what they deserve? Eventually, I said. Then I kissed her on the cheek and went upstairs. She stayed at the table a long time after that. I think, for the first time, the air started to feel different to her. Not quite safe. Not quite home. I always figured when the cracks started to show, it would be loud, maybe a fight, some screaming, tears. But no. It began with a voicemail. Elise came home from work pale and quiet. She barely spoke during dinner. Just sat there, pushing couscous around her plate. I didn't press her. I already knew what happened. Jordan had followed through. An anonymous complaint was filed with the Oregon State Board of Licensed Therapists. It questioned Elisa's professional judgment and her relationship with a non-accredited wellness facilitator, who had been known to overstep emotional boundaries with clients. The complaint didn't accuse her of cheating. It didn't mention names. But it didn't have to. It was enough to rattle the walls. The next morning, I stood at the sink pouring coffee when Elise walked in, still in her robe, her voice tight. Do you think I'm a good therapist? It was such a strange question to hear at 7 a.m. I turned, leaned against the counter. Yeah. I think you're good at listening. At reading people. She nodded. Looked away. I got a weird message at work yesterday. From the board. I played dumb. About what? Some kind of ethics concern. They said it might be nothing, just standard procedure, but still. Maybe someone's jealous, I said, sipping my coffee. You've always had that effect. She gave a weak smile, but her eyes didn't match it. Elise took the next day off. She said she needed rest. She barely left the bedroom. Just lay there, scrolling through her phone, staring at emails she didn't open. I could feel her mind spiraling, not from guilt, but from fear. Because in her world, perception was everything. And someone had just turned the mirror on her. Meanwhile, Mason was cracking. Abby sent me a screenshot of one of his private group posts from his retreat forum. To those trying to poison my name, I see you. I forgive you. But know this, truth has a way of revealing itself. A dozen women posted hearts and support emojis underneath. A few asked if he was okay. One woman replied, simply. Your truth sounds a lot like someone else's nightmare. That one stayed up for about 3 minutes before it was deleted. On Friday, Elise finally confronted me. Sort of. We were watching TV, and during a commercial break, she muted the volume and turned to me. Do you think people are capable of rebuilding? After betrayal? I didn't look at her. Just stared at the screen. I think it depends who did the betraying, I said. She swallowed hard. What if someone didn't mean to hurt anyone, but just felt empty? And made a mistake? Now I looked at her. If they felt empty, they should have looked inside themselves. Not outside their marriage. She didn't respond. Just unmuted the TV. But she didn't watch it. That weekend, I met Abby again. We talked strategy. Mason was trying to pivot. He'd shut down his coaching site and started pitching himself as a relationship podcast host. He's rebranding, Abby said. Probably trying to get ahead of the noise. We won't let him, I said. We drafted 2 more anonymous statements, one for the Better Business Bureau, and one for a podcast network Mason had applied to. Both outlined a pattern of coercive emotional behavior, tied to financial abuse of female clients. Both came with documentation from Claire, Rebecca, and one new source Jordan had pulled in, another woman who had signed a non-disclosure agreement with Mason 5 years ago and now wanted out. The dominoes weren't just falling now. They were rolling downhill. Back home, Elise was unraveling. She stayed up late, jumped at phone calls, kept her laptop open like a lifeline. She hadn't gone to see Mason in 2 weeks. I knew because the tile in her purse hadn't moved outside city limits. He was pulling away from her. Or maybe she'd already been discarded. Either way, I could see it, in the way she hugged herself when she thought I wasn't looking. In the wine she now needed at lunch. In the way she lingered in rooms like she was waiting for someone to come save her. But no one was coming. Certainly not me. On Sunday morning, she found me reading on the porch. Would you go to therapy with me? She asked. I looked up. I think I just need to figure some things out, she said, voice soft. I feel like I've drifted. I closed my book. You're not drifting, I said. You're just waking up. She blinked. Waking up to what? To who you've been, I said. And what it's going to cost you. I stood, walked past her, and didn't look back. Because the next part wasn't about saving her. It was about watching her face the truth, alone. By the time most people realize the damage is done, the fire's already under the floorboards. Elise spent Monday morning staring at her phone. She hadn't touched her coffee. I watched from across the kitchen, letting the silence stretch. Around 10 a.m., she finally spoke. They've opened a formal review. I didn't ask who they were. The board wants me to come in, she added. It's not disciplinary. Yet. I nodded slowly. You'll handle it. She looked at me for a moment, as if searching for the man who used to offer her comfort. But that man was gone. She'd buried him herself. Meanwhile, Mason had resurfaced. Abby forwarded me a clip from a podcast test pilot he recorded for a wellness network. In it, he spoke about healing after betrayal and reclaiming your power through self-forgiveness. I almost laughed. But what struck me was how rattled he sounded. The charm was still there, but it was thinner now, forced. Like he wasn't sure it was working anymore. That was the moment I knew we had him cornered. Jordan made the next move. She scheduled a quiet meeting with the producer at the podcast network Mason had applied to. She shared the compiled documentation, complaints, testimony, audio files. It wasn't a smear campaign. It was a pattern. 2 days later, Mason received a formal rejection letter. The wording was polite. The subtext was lethal. Back home, Elise was folding laundry when I walked in. She didn't look up. "Have you noticed anything off about Mason lately?" she asked, her voice a near whisper. I pretended to think. "Should I?" She paused. "He hasn't called me back in over a week. I think he's dealing with something. He's paranoid. Says people are after him." I shrugged. "Maybe they are." She looked at me, eyes narrowing just slightly. And I smiled. That evening, I checked the secure account Jordan and I used. A new video had been uploaded. Mason. Alone. Speaking to his retreat followers via live stream. He looked worn. Hair unkempt. Eyes twitching between screens. Some of you may have heard, lies. Attacks. But the truth is, I've helped dozens of women find their path. Some people can't handle that. He rubbed his eyes. Took a deep breath. This is just a pause. Not the end. It was the closest he'd ever come to admitting he was afraid. I downloaded the video. The next morning, Elise didn't go to work. She stayed in bed. Shades down. Lights off. I left her breakfast on the nightstand and didn't say a word. That afternoon, she came downstairs, pale and quiet. "I think I need to resign," she said. "Just for now. Until things settle." I nodded. "I might lose my license," she added. I didn't react. And that, I think, broke something in her. Late that night, I heard her crying in the bathroom. Not loud. Not performative. Just quiet, exhausted sobs behind a locked door. She still didn't know how much I knew. She still thought she could fix it all, that if she suffered enough in private, the world would reset. But that's not how justice works. You don't get to cheat reality and expect a refund. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. Elisa's fall came in quiet stages, emails that stopped getting answered, patients who began canceling sessions, and finally a meeting with her clinical board that ended in the kind of silence professionals dread. That evening, she came home, dropped her bag on the floor, and stared at the wall for 10 minutes. "I'm under review for dual relationships," she finally said. I didn't ask what that meant. She kept going. "They know I was involved with someone outside of protocol. They won't say how they know. But they know." Her hands were trembling. I poured her tea. No comfort. Just action. She didn't touch it. Meanwhile, Mason was unraveling. Abby sent me another recording, this time from one of his former retreat staff members. She'd reached out on her own, offering a phone call with Jordan. Apparently, Mason had been warning his inner circle that legal vultures were circling, and that someone, a jealous ex-client, he claimed, was trying to frame him. Classic misdirection. But he was slipping. And when men like him slip, they panic. That Friday, Elise received a text. She didn't know I saw it. I just happened to be walking by as her phone lit up. "Mason, we need to talk. In person. Urgent." She left the house at 6:42 p.m. I didn't stop her. But I did call Abby. Time to end it, I said. She didn't ask what I meant. Just, where? Mason picked a hotel bar in Bend. Classy enough to feel safe. Dark enough to feel private. Elise sat across from him. I watched from a car parked outside, phone on speaker, listening to the live audio feed from Abby's hidden mic. She was at a nearby table, pretending to read a book. Mason sounded tired. Not shaken, frayed. I don't know who's doing this, Elise, he said. But someone's targeting me. And it started not long after you disappeared on me. She was quiet. You didn't say anything, did you? No, Elise whispered. You sure? Mason asked, his voice low. And that's when she broke. I'm losing my job, she said. They're investigating me. They knew about us. About everything. Mason leaned in. Look, you and we're good people. We just got caught up. You said this would be healing, she snapped, her voice cracking. That it was safe. Mason paused, then reached into his coat. I held my breath. But it wasn't a weapon. It was a check. $15,000. Dated that morning. Take it, he said. If anyone asks, say you were manipulated. Play the victim. Say I used my position. You did, she replied coldly. Mason blinked. I did what? He said. You used your position. Then she stood up and left. That was all we needed. Jordan submitted the recording to the board under whistleblower protections. Rebecca forwarded it to an investigative reporter she trusted. Abby, well, she just watched it burn from a distance. Elise returned home just after 9. I was on the porch. She sat down beside me without a word. I saw him, she finally said. I know. She looked at me, startled. I met her eyes. Calm. I've known for a long time, Elise. Tears welled. Why didn't you say anything? Because you would have denied it. Lied. Made it harder for both of us. I needed you to walk yourself to the edge. She swallowed. I'm there now. I know. She turned away. Is there anything left of us? I stood up. There's you. And there's me. And there's the truth between us. That's all that's left. Elisa's world didn't shatter in one blow, it crumbled piece by piece. The ethics board launched a formal investigation. Nothing dramatic, just a sterile letter delivered via email on a Tuesday morning. She sat at the kitchen table, eyes locked on the screen, lips slightly parted. I pretended not to notice. By noon, she had called in sick to her clinic. By evening, she'd poured her second glass of wine and hadn't changed out of her robe. I might lose everything, she finally whispered, more to herself than to me. I didn't respond. She wasn't talking to the man she once married. She was talking to the echo of what she threw away. Across the state, Mason was spinning. Jordan had confirmed it. After the podcast rejection and the anonymous complaints, he tried launching a new coaching website under a different name. But we were watching. The second the domain went live, it was flagged. We had contacts now. Real ones. People who cared more about the damage than the drama. And one of them leaked an internal email. Mason was officially blacklisted from the retreat network he once belonged to. His name was now radioactive. That Friday, Elise received a message. I didn't need to see the screen. I saw it in her face, the flicker of desperation, fear, and hope all tangled into one glance. She left the house around 6:45 p.m., no explanation. I didn't ask. But I did make a call. The meeting spot was a dimly lit hotel bar in Bend. Elise thought it was private. But she wasn't the only one Mason reached out to. Abby was there, a few tables away, pretending to scroll her phone. The mic in her purse picked up everything. Mason's voice came through the feed, still trying to sound in control, but thinner now, worn down. I'm being attacked, Elise. Someone wants to destroy me. You think it's me? She asked. I don't know, he said. But if it is, we need to fix it. Together. He slid something across the table. A check. 15 grand. Dated that morning. Use it for legal help, he said. Say I manipulated you. Make it look one-sided. That'll kill the story. Elise stared at it for a long moment. Then, in the clearest voice she'd used in weeks, it wasn't just one-sided. But yes, you did manipulate me. She stood, left the check untouched, and walked out. That recording was everything. Jordan sent it, anonymously, to the therapist board and attached the timeline of events, supported by Rebecca and Abby. Elisa's affair wasn't just unethical. It was documented now. On record. Impossible to bury. By Monday, her license was suspended pending full review. Her name was quietly removed from the clinic website that same week. She didn't cry when the letter came. She just sat on the edge of our bed, holding the envelope like it weighed more than her body. I worked for 15 years, she said softly. For this. I nodded. You knew. I did. Why didn't you stop me? Because you wouldn't have listened. She said nothing for a long time. Then, is there anything left to save? I stood. Calm. Final. There's nothing left to lie about. That's something. And I walked out of the room, leaving her in the quiet she'd earned. We didn't say much the morning she left. She had 2 suitcases by the door. I didn't help her carry them. She didn't ask me to. Elise stood there for a few seconds, maybe expecting me to speak. Maybe hoping I'd change my mind. But the man she wanted to return to didn't live here anymore. I don't know who I am without all this, she finally said. I looked at her. Then it's time you figured it out. She nodded, stepped outside, and closed the door behind her. Not a slam. Just a click. Like a lock turning for the last time. 2 days earlier, she'd received a letter from the state board. Her license was suspended. The word indefinitely was underlined. No job. No clients. No backup plan. She called it unfair. I called it gravity. Actions have weight. Eventually, they hit the ground. Mason's world fell harder. After Elise rejected the check and left their final meeting, Abby handed over the last piece we needed, audio proof that he'd encouraged a licensed therapist to lie to protect him. Jordan sent it, anonymously, to a small but reputable investigative podcast. The kind that doesn't deal in gossip, just facts. A month later, the episode aired. The Healer Who Harmed. No names redacted. No lawsuits filed. Because truth isn't slander. By the end of the week, Mason's website was offline. His coaching business dissolved. His name trended locally, then disappeared entirely, like a stain scrubbed too hard into the fabric. He tried to post a response video. Comments were turned off before anyone even saw it. I kept my distance from Elise after she left. We exchanged a few emails through the lawyers. She moved into a short-term rental. No alimony. No shared assets. I kept the house. I kept my peace. She asked to meet once, just to talk. I declined. There's nothing more to say to someone who waited until everything collapsed before admitting it was broken. I see Abby sometimes. We don't talk about Elise or Mason. Not anymore. Just books, work, the strange comfort of knowing some people don't get away with it. She smiles more now. So do I. The thing about revenge is, it doesn't heal you. But justice, real, quiet, unflinching justice, it does something better. It returns your name to you. Your dignity. Your stillness. That's what I kept. That's what she lost. And in the end, that was all I needed.